Okay, this is going to be a very hot take, and I apologize sincerely for this. I know a lot of you are not going to agree with me. But if I am correct, and The War Within is movie 1 in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I really hope that Blizzard leans into that a lot more. I want to see The War Within be the setup expansion. I think we have some phenomenal storylines that's already been set up. We have the Xalatath storyline that is slowly sort of starting to be unraveled and unfolding. We have the story of the Earthen that is there, and some things have been resolved, but there's still so many questions, especially considering that the Earthen themselves don't remember a lot of their own history, right? As a result of what happened, a lot of their own history is completely a mystery to them. You have the Skarden, which seems like a very good element that Blizzard wants to bring in. You have the Haranir, that is literally just something that's been thrown out there. We saw one in-game cinematic for the Haranir, and then nothing else. Nothing else building on top of that. It doesn't feel like the Nerubian story is completely at an end. Yes, I know that the Queen is dead. Queen Ansurek is dead, but it does feel like there's still room for the Nerubian story to play a part. There's a massive story being set up with the Titan Keepers and the Titan Watchers that I think also deserves more build-up. There's the new Manifold Coreway Engines storyline that's unfolding with the disc quests that I think, you have a Hallowfall, which if you think about Hallowfall, we've really only started to scratch the surface of what Hallowfall could potentially be. You have the Arathi, which again only really scratched the surface of what they could be. So I genuinely think that from a storytelling perspective, there's so many pokes in the fire. Not to mention, I just this week during the live stream, I was talking about the decay forests that seem to be around, the mushroom people that seem to play a role. And if you guys remember, in Shadowlands we had mushrooms, in Dragonflight we had mushroom people, and now we have mushroom people again. So clearly there is a storyline that Blizzard is looking to explore at some point. So I really hope that The War Within delivers all of these potential storylines, right? So just these potential little foundational blocks. Is that going to piss a lot of people off? Yes, absolutely. Do I care that a lot of people are going to get pissed off by that? Absolutely not. Because I think if Blizzard continues down this road, by the time midnight comes around, you've laid out the foundation in such a way that you have so much. The Goblin story is another one, right? The Cobalt story is another one that definitely you can see maybe some more involved in there. I haven't even covered all of the storylines that potentially still exist in this world that's been laid out. And that's not to say anything about the sea, the unending ocean under the ocean that we now know has much more than what we think we see now, right? We know that this place is big, and we can't really traverse it, we can't really explore it, but we might be able to explore it in the future because we know that there's more going on there. The Kraken storyline that you got with the side quest that you did for the Peculiar Fish, all of these are potential storylines that Blizzard have set up, and I hope that the next few patches do the exact same thing, just lays groundwork. Sure, do small resolutions, but do sort of what you would call intermediate resolutions. In other words, it's not the finale, it's a step towards the finale. Because this gives you, in Midnight, the opportunity to really start springboarding into the crescendo, right? So the story is now starting to build, and you use Midnight as the middle. But so you think of the three expansions in World of Warcraft as as a book. So in a book, one of the stupidest sayings ever, but so apt, is that every good story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? And most people think, yeah, all right, cool, well done, Sherlock. But what most people fail to realize is in that small little silly saying, every good story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, lies the entire secret of writing a good story. A story needs to have a beginning. The beginning has to be believable, it has to be interesting, and it has to be gripping. Because if you lose your audience in the beginning, you're not getting your audience back in the middle because they've already left. The middle is where the story now starts to build. You now set up the stakes. So in the beginning, you laid the foundation with potential stakes for the future. This allows the audience to sort of think, ooh, what could this mean? What could happen here? How could this be? In the middle bit, midnight in other words, this is where you start really laying the stakes down. So now the audience gets really gripped. Oh shit, these are some big moments. There's big things coming here. And then in the last Titan is where you see the crescendo. It's where the story reaches its peak, and then you see a slow unwinding of that story. Now, of course, that leads into another question. What does the next saga look like? Is the next saga going to have the same kind of lock-in with the previous saga as we had with the expansions? Because remember, before the War Within, the way expansions worked were they were pretty much one-shots. For those of you that don't play D&D, in D&D, you have two types of games. You can have campaigns. Campaigns can last for many, many years. I know of one of my mods who knows of people who have had a campaign for the last 20 years. One campaign that's been around for 20 years. Every single week, they meet and they play this one campaign. And then you can have a thing called one-shots. One-shots tend to happen in 4 to 5 hours. People have pre-made characters and they sort of just one-shot. One-shots have a lot of fighting, very little lore and development, because the story has to be able to start, build, and end in 5 hours. Campaigns don't work that way. They're a lot more free in that regard. And in the past, Blizzard expansions have been one-shots, because everything has to start, build, and end in a single expansion, with very little being carried over between expansions. Yes, the lore would sort of always connect on a sort of on an almost loose way. The lore would connect, but the lore would not be intertwined, right? It wouldn't be the same story just carried over from expansion to expansion. It would be a great example of this is the Nightmare in Legion, right? In Legion, we have the Nightmare raid, we have Xavius and sort of elements of the overarching connection. That's a good word for it. SS. So the Nightmare is the element that gets carried over into Battle for Azeroth for that story to take off. But the most of Legion finishes in Legion. And then you, of course, have Odin and Helia's storyline that bridges sort of the Battle for Azeroth gap and then goes into Shadowlands. But this is how most 90% of Legion ends in Legion, with only some elements carrying over. Now, of course, in the War Within, it's 100% of what is established in the War Within will carry over into Midnight, will carry over into the Last Titan. But now the big question becomes, if we pair all of these together and we say this is... So now we have the World Soul Saga with the 3 expansions into it. Will the next saga connect to the previous saga in the same way that the 3 individual expansions connected to each other within the World Soul Saga? My hope is that they do. My hope is that we finally get a World of Warcraft where the story is a continuous road of storytelling. So after the World Soul Saga, we're not suddenly gonna, screw off to some other realms or to the Void realms. We're going to stay within whichever scenarios Midnight sets up for us. Or if Midnight does indeed lead us into the realms of the Void, then that the next saga takes place within the realms of the Void. Do you understand what I mean? More connective tissue, less one-shotting. That's what I would like to see. I realize that that's going to be a massive... it's going to require a lot of adaptation from the general player base in World of Warcraft, because the general player is used to having big moments as quickly as possible so we can move on with the story. But I'm hopeful that what we get is a really cool story told in a really cool way. So yeah, I'm excited for the potential of this storyline and for the potential of where this storyline can actually go.